Ethan Carter had always been a man of curiosity. As a human diplomat and linguist, he had spent years studying alien cultures, learning their languages and traveling to distant worlds to understand their ways. But nothing in his career had prepared him for what he saw one morning on his communication console, an invitation unlike any other he had ever received. The message shimmered in gold and violet, written in a language that somehow instantly he could comprehend, a courtesy of his years of studying alien linguistics. It was an invitation to a wedding, not on a nearby colony or a diplomatic hub, but on Veralia, the home planet of the Xiliens, a species known across the galaxy for their intricate customs and powerful technology. Ethan stared at the message, rereading it 3 times. It was polite, formal, and oddly personal. The Xilian royal family requested his presence as a guest at the wedding of a high-ranking noble, promising that his attendance would honor the union. Normally, invitations of this nature were reserved for high-ranking officials or alien experts of enormous prestige. Ethan, although respected among human diplomats, was neither a noble nor a hero. He rubbed his eyes. Perhaps it was a mistake, but the holographic seal of the Xilian king itself hovered over the message, shimmering with authority. He could not refuse. Something about the invitation called to him, not just duty but curiosity. He had spent his life navigating alien societies, but never had he been so directly invited into the heart of one. The Xiliens were rumored to be beautiful, terrifying and astonishingly wise. Their capital city, Lumivara, was said to float above the planet's surface on shimmering energy fields. Their gardens glowed with bioluminescent plants, and their buildings defied gravity, twisting into shapes that made humans' heads spin. To see it, he knew, would be a privilege unlike any other. Within a week, Ethan was on a cruiser designed to traverse light years. The journey itself was quiet, giving him time to ponder what he would encounter. He reviewed every detail he had about Xilian society, their honor codes, their art of communication through subtle movements, and their ability to read emotional states with uncanny precision. Humans often relied on words and gestures, but Xiliens could sense intent with clarity that bordered on telepathy. A single wrong move could insult the court, or worse. The cruiser approached Lumivara with a slow, deliberate grace. Ethan leaned over the observation deck and stared. The city shimmered like a constellation brought to life. Towers of translucent crystal stretched toward the sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of Veralia's twin suns. Bridges and pathways floated in midair, connecting platforms and gardens that glowed with soft neon hues. Hovering vehicles glided silently along invisible tracks. The city seemed alive, a living organism of energy, light, and movement. Ethan felt both awe and fear. He had walked among alien civilizations before, but nothing matched this grandeur. As the cruiser docked on one of the central platforms, Ethan was greeted by attendants. They were tall, graceful, and alien in every way. Their skin shimmered in soft metallic tones, and their eyes glowed faintly. Their limbs were long and flexible, and their movements were precise, almost choreographed. One of them, a female attendant with iridescent markings along her arms, bowed deeply. "Welcome, guest of honor," she said in perfect common, the galactic language Ethan had mastered. "The royal family awaits your arrival." Ethan nodded, unsure of how much to bow or how formal his gestures should be. In Xilian culture, even a small misstep could carry deep meaning. He followed the attendant through corridors that twisted and rose like stairways in 3 dimensions. He saw other guests, humanoids and aliens alike, all dressed in colors that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Everyone moved with careful deliberation, acknowledging each other with subtle nods and shifts of their shoulders. The sense of precision was overwhelming. Finally, he reached the main hall. The ceiling stretched higher than any human eye could measure, dotted with floating lights that pulsed like stars. At the far end, a platform rose above the crowd where a Xilian noble couple stood, resplendent in ceremonial garb. The bride's gown flowed in liquid-like fabric that changed colors with her movements, and the groom's attire gleamed with intricate geometric patterns. Ethan's breath caught. The beauty, the elegance, and the alien nature of the ceremony were unlike anything he had imagined. He took a tentative step forward, trying to remain unobtrusive. Yet despite his efforts to blend in, the Xilien's attention seemed to fall on him. It was subtle at first, a tilt of the head, a glance that lingered. Then the king himself, An imposing figure with flowing robes of shifting light stood and regarded Ethan directly. Ethan froze, feeling the weight of the gaze. The hall seemed to grow quiet, as if every guest had sensed the moment. "Guest from Earth," the king's voice resonated, deep and musical, vibrating not just in the air but somehow in Ethan's mind. "Your presence honors us more than words can convey." Ethan bowed deeply, unsure how low was appropriate. "It is an honor to attend," he replied carefully. He felt a strange mix of pride and fear. This was no ordinary diplomatic encounter. This was something larger, something steeped in tradition and expectation. The ceremony began with music that was alien yet enchanting. Instruments seemed to float in mid-air, creating harmonies that vibrated through the very floor. Lights danced along the walls in patterns that told stories ancient and powerful. The bride and groom exchanged gestures that Ethan could not fully understand. Movements that seemed to convey not just words but emotions, history, and promises. He watched, fascinated and cautious, trying to discern the meaning in every step. As the ceremony progressed, Ethan noticed subtle glances directed at him from Lysera, the king's daughter. Her eyes glowed softly, a sign of curiosity among her people. She observed him with intense focus, tilting her head as if trying to decode every gesture he made. Ethan felt both uncomfortable and strangely flattered. Humans were not often the focus of Zillion attention, especially in such an important ceremony. Yet here, he was not just a guest, he was noticed. After the formal rituals, Ethan mingled carefully, offering polite words and gestures of respect. The Zillions, despite their elegance, were surprisingly approachable when one knew how to read the subtle cues. He spoke to scholars, artists, and dignitaries, learning fragments of their history and culture. He marveled at their technology, their understanding of physics and biology that surpassed humanity in every measurable way. Yet he also saw something in them he had never expected, a deep reverence for courage, honesty, and creativity. The traits humans often took for granted were celebrated among the Zillions, almost as if their rigid society valued a spark of unpredictability. As the evening deepened, the ceremony reached a pivotal moment. Ethan had stepped aside, thinking he was blending into the background, when a court official approached him. The official bowed, a graceful movement that seemed almost impossible for a human to imitate perfectly. "Guest from Earth," the official said. "By the decree of the royal family and according to ancient tradition, your presence is required at the center of the ceremony." Ethan blinked. He had not expected this. I am just a guest," he said carefully. "I do not belong in your rituals." The official's eyes glowed briefly, a sign that they were processing Ethan's words. Then they gestured for him to follow. Hesitant but compelled, Ethan stepped forward. The Zillion guests watched silently, their movements frozen in respect. The energy in the hall shifted, as if the very atmosphere was aware that something extraordinary was happening. He was led to the central platform where Lysera awaited. Her gaze was steady, her posture regal. Ethan noticed a subtle smile, one that suggested curiosity rather than reproach. The court seemed to lean in, waiting, observing the human as if he were a living puzzle to be solved. Ethan realized with a sudden chilling awareness that this ceremony was no longer about the couple alone. Something about him, his presence, his gestures, his very nature, had become part of the unfolding ritual. Ethan took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. He had faced alien customs before, negotiated with hostile species, and studied countless civilizations. But nothing had prepared him for this, the sense that he was about to play a role in a tradition older than most stars in the galaxy, a role that he did not understand and could not refuse. Lysera extended her hand, not in a gesture of invitation but as part of the ritual. Ethan hesitated, then placed his hand in hers. The touch was warm, surprisingly human in its resonance, and a ripple of energy passed through the platform. The court gasped softly. Ethan felt the vibrations of recognition and respect washing over him. And for the first time he understood, in Zillion culture, small acts could carry enormous weight. The king's voice filled the hall once more, echoing through Ethan's mind and body. "The guest from Earth honors us with his courage and presence. May his journey among us be guided by wisdom, and may he understand the meaning of our ways." Ethan bowed again, more deeply this time, feeling the weight of the moment. He did not yet understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. This visit, this ceremony, would change his life forever. What he thought was a simple invitation to observe a wedding had become something far more complex. Something that might challenge every assumption he had about humans. Ethan Carter had expected the wedding to be a momentary glimpse into Xilian culture, a short visit to admire the alien city and its traditions. But as the music and lights of the ceremony faded, he realized he had become the center of attention in ways he could never have predicted. The court moved with careful precision, yet every movement seemed to acknowledge him. He had been invited as a guest, yet the Xilians' rituals suggested he was more than that. An unexpected participant in a story that stretched far beyond his understanding. As the evening progressed, attendants guided him through the grand halls of Lumivara. Each corridor seemed alive, adorned with plants that glowed softly in harmony with the building's energy, and walls that shimmered with shifting patterns of color. The air carried a faint hum, a constant reminder of the planet's energy field that powered everything. Ethan felt a mix of awe and nervousness. Every step he took was watched, every glance he gave analyzed. He had studied Xilian behavior for years, but nothing prepared him for being under the gaze of an entire royal court. He was led to a central garden, floating high above the city's surface. Bioluminescent flowers and vines twisted in ways that defied human understanding, forming intricate patterns in midair. Water flowed in arcs, suspended by energy, glimmering like liquid crystal. In the center of this garden stood Lysera, the king's daughter, her gown shifting with hues that seemed to echo the floating flora around her. Her eyes glowed softly as she studied him. There was curiosity in her expression, but also a hint of amusement, as if she was watching a puzzle being solved in real time. "You are unlike any human I have ever encountered," she said, her voice musical and slightly vibrating in his mind. "You move differently, think differently, yet you are fascinating." Ethan bowed respectfully. "I am honored to be here, Princess Lysera. Your city, your culture. It is unlike anything I have ever experienced." She tilted her head, her gaze sharp and thoughtful. "You are more than polite words, human. I can sense it. You are curious, observant, cautious, and yet you do not fear being observed. That is rare, even among my people." Ethan smiled, unsure whether to take it as a compliment or a warning. "I have learned that understanding others requires patience and attention. And sometimes, mistakes help us understand more than perfection ever could." Lysera's glow flickered subtly, a sign that she appreciated his answer. "Perhaps. But some mistakes here carry weight far beyond what you imagine. Every action is watched. Every gesture means something." Ethan nodded. "Then I will try to be careful." Lysera laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes. "Careful, yes. But also human. You must learn to trust your instincts. Some things cannot be calculated, only felt." They walked through the garden, Ethan careful not to step too close to the floating walkways, his senses alert to every subtle signal from the attendants and courtiers nearby. Yet, despite the careful choreography, he began to notice something remarkable. The Xilians were not rigid robots. They were fluid, elegant, and precise, yes, but there was a form of creativity in their movements, a way of bending rules without breaking them. Humans had adaptability, and Ethan realized that might be the trait drawing Lysera's attention. As they approached a central platform within the garden, an elder Xilian stepped forward. His robes shimmered with golden threads and his eyes glowed faintly with age and wisdom. "Princess Lysera," he said, addressing her but glancing at Ethan as well. "The guest from Earth has observed our customs with respect. His presence has already altered the flow of the ceremony, and yet he has not faltered. Shall he witness the next ritual?" Lysera's gaze met Ethan's. "You will witness it," she said almost teasingly. "It is a ritual few outsiders survive without misunderstanding." Ethan felt a twinge of anxiety. He had studied Xilian rituals extensively, but witnessing one firsthand with the court observing him was entirely different. The elder guided them to a circular chamber, where a translucent floor revealed the glowing city below. In the center, a raised dais pulsed with energy, and around it, floating symbols of intricate design rotated slowly, forming patterns that seemed both mathematical and alive. "This ritual is called the harmonic binding," the elder explained. "It is used to honor unions, to align energies between beings, and to celebrate connections. It is subtle, complex, and unforgiving to those who fail to read its rhythm." Ethan watched carefully as Lysra stepped onto the dais. The floating symbols responded to her presence, glowing brighter with each movement. Ethan felt the energy through the floor, a vibration that resonated with his own heartbeat. When he stepped onto the dais beside her, he noticed a change. The symbols reacted to him as well, though differently. The energy seemed to recognize his humanity, his emotions, and his awareness. "Step lightly, human," Lysra instructed. "Let your movements be guided by feeling, not thought. If you overthink, you will disrupt the harmony." Ethan nodded, taking careful steps. He felt every vibration, every subtle shift in the energy beneath his feet. The symbols responded, intertwining with the rhythms of the ceremony. Courtiers watched silently, their glowing eyes tracking every movement. Ethan realized he was no longer a passive observer. His presence was shaping the ritual, influencing the patterns in ways he could barely comprehend. Suddenly, a ripple passed through the dais, and the elder's eyes widened. "It has recognized him," he whispered. "The prophecy. Perhaps it is true," Ethan froze. He had heard whispers about Xelian prophecies, ancient texts that spoke of outsiders who would appear in times of great importance. He had never imagined being part of one. His mind raced. How could a human be involved in an alien prophecy? What did it mean? Lysra's eyes met his, glowing softly. "Do you understand now, human?" she asked. "Your presence here is not by chance. You are chosen." Ethan felt a mixture of awe and fear. "Chosen? I do not understand. I am a guest. I am not part of your family, your rituals. I am just human." "You are more than that," she said softly. "Humans are unpredictable. Courageous, clever, compassionate. These traits are rare even among Xelians. And the prophecy recognizes what we often cannot see in our own people." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to calm the rapid beating of his heart. He had always known humans were adaptable, resourceful, capable of extraordinary acts. But to be recognized for these traits by an alien civilization was something entirely new. He felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. The harmonic binding continued, the symbols now swirling around them in complex patterns. Ethan focused on his instincts, allowing himself to move with intuition rather than thought. He sensed the flow of energy, the subtle cues in Lysra's movements and the rhythms of the chamber. Slowly he began to understand, aligning his steps, his gestures, his emotions with the ceremony. The symbols pulsed brighter, their glow harmonizing with his heartbeat. The courtiers watched in silence, their expressions unreadable to Ethan, yet he sensed approval. Small, subtle signs, shifts of posture, flickers of light in their eyes, indicated that he was passing the first test of presence. He felt a wave of relief and accomplishment. When the ritual concluded, the energy subsided, leaving a serene glow in the chamber. Lysra turned to him, a small smile on her lips. "You have done well, human. You are learning, adapting, and that is rare indeed." Ethan bowed, trying to mask his exhaustion. "Thank you, Princess. I am honored, truly." "You are more than a guest now," she said. "The court watches you not as an outsider, but as someone who may play a greater role in our world. You must be prepared. What comes next will challenge everything you know." Ethan's mind raced. He had come expecting a simple visit, a chance to observe and learn. Instead, he found himself at the center of rituals, recognized by a princess and whispered about in the court as someone remarkable. He realized that every choice he made, every movement, every gesture would now carry weight beyond what he had ever imagined. As he followed Lysra back through the garden, he reflected on the uniqueness of humanity. Humans were fragile in many ways, yet resilient. They could think creatively, act boldly, and feel deeply. He realized that these traits, so ordinary on Earth, were extraordinary in the context of Xelian society. Here in this alien world of light, energy, and ritual, humanity's strength shone in ways even the Xelians did not anticipate. By the time they returned to the royal halls, Ethan understood one undeniable truth. His journey on Varelia had only begun. What he thought would be a brief visit had become an immersion into a civilization that would test his courage, intellect, and heart. And somewhere deep inside he felt a thrill, not of fear but of anticipation. He was part of something extraordinary, something that could change not only his life but the future of human-alien relations in ways no one had ever imagined. Ethan Carter had thought that participating in the harmonic binding, would be the most remarkable moment of his visit to Varelia. But he was quickly learning that the Zillions world was full of surprises, some pleasant, some bewildering, and some outright alarming. He had barely caught his breath after the ritual when whispers began to ripple through the court. Courtiers moved with subtle glances and half-smiles, their eyes flicking toward him in a way that suggested fascination, curiosity, and something else he could not yet name. Lysera, the princess, noticed his confusion and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Do not be alarmed, human," she said softly, her voice carrying both reassurance and amusement. "The court sees more than you know. They see potential. And sometimes, potential requires recognition in ways that surprise even those involved." Ethan swallowed hard. "Recognition? I do not understand. I am here as a guest. I am not part of this family. I am not—" "You are more than you think," Lysera interrupted, her gaze steady. "Sometimes a visitor can fulfill roles that our own cannot. Sometimes what is foreign brings balance. There are traditions here older than memory, and some of them speak of an outsider. You are that outsider, human." Ethan felt a chill. He had studied Zillion culture extensively, and he knew their ceremonies often had deep layers of meaning, but he had never imagined that he could be swept into one so completely. "Outsider?" he asked cautiously. "I am honored, but I fear misunderstanding. I do not belong here in that way." Lysera smiled faintly. "Belonging is sometimes not a matter of choice. The court will guide you." It was at that moment that a herald entered the hall, his robe shimmering with golden light. He moved to the center of the court, and the room fell silent. Every Zillion present turned their glowing eyes toward him, and Ethan instinctively straightened, sensing the importance of what was about to happen. "By decree of the royal family," the herald announced, his voice resonating through the hall, "and according to the prophecy of our ancestors, the guest from Earth has been observed and recognized as one who embodies courage, wisdom, and balance. Therefore," he paused and Ethan's stomach tightened, "he shall be honored with the role of groom to Princess Lysera, daughter of King Virel." The words struck Ethan like a thunderclap. He froze, unable to respond. Around him, the Zillion court remained perfectly composed, but their glowing eyes and subtle nods communicated approval and expectation. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He had studied alien societies, but no guidebook had ever warned him about being unexpectedly crowned a groom, in the middle of a wedding he had attended as a guest. Lysera's gaze softened, but there was a spark of mischief in her eyes. "Do not panic," she said quietly, as if sensing the storm of emotions within him. "This is not a punishment. It is a recognition of qualities you possess, qualities rare even among my people. You may protest if you wish, but here, modesty is a form of honor. They interpret hesitation as virtue, restraint, and courage." Ethan shook his head. "Princess, I cannot accept this." This is not—" "You are human," Lysera said simply. "And humans are remarkable in ways we do not always understand. That is why you are chosen. That is why the prophecy speaks of you. The court will not force you, but they will honor you, and you will honor them by your response." The court remained silent, their eyes glowing with expectation. Ethan realized that in Zillion culture, refusal was not merely a personal choice. It carried meaning. Hesitation, resistance, or compliance would all be interpreted, and he could not simply walk away. He felt the weight of centuries of tradition pressing upon him, yet beneath that weight he felt something he had never experienced before, the thrill of being recognized for his humanity. He took a deep breath. I am only a guest. I am not part of your family, and I do not understand these traditions fully. But I respect them. I will do my best to honor what is expected of me as much as a human can." A murmur of approval rippled through the hall. Lysera's eyes glowed brightly and she inclined her head. "That is all anyone can ask. Courage is not the absence of fear, human. Courage is moving forward despite it." The herald motioned for Ethan to follow. He was led through a series of halls filled with alien art, floating light patterns and intricate sculptures that seemed alive. As they moved, Ethan noticed the subtle gestures of the court around him, their silent communications, the way they shifted their posture to accommodate him, and the glances that seemed to measure his reactions. He realized that every moment now held significance. Every step he took would be interpreted as part of his suitability for this extraordinary role. Finally, They arrived at a chamber unlike any he had seen before. It was circular with walls of crystal that reflected the floating lights in endless patterns. In the center stood a platform, elevated slightly above the floor, with a glowing energy field that pulsed like a heartbeat. Lysera stepped onto the platform and the energy responded to her presence, expanding outward in a gentle wave. Ethan followed, feeling the vibrations beneath his feet. "This platform is the heart of Virelia," Lysera explained. "It measures alignment, harmony, and intention. When a union is recognized here, it is not just symbolic. It resonates with the energies of the planet, the court, and the stars themselves. Humans are rare visitors, and their presence here is unusual. You must move with awareness and sincerity." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. He had participated in ceremonies before, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Every instinct he had studied as a diplomat, every lesson in observation and empathy, would now be tested in real time, under the scrutiny of an entire civilization. The elder who had guided them earlier stepped forward. "The guest from Earth is now recognized as a participant in the binding," he said. "He shall demonstrate his understanding of our ways through observation, action, and choice. This is not merely ceremony. It is trial." Ethan felt a surge of determination. He had always believed in the power of human adaptability, in the ability to observe, learn, and respond to new situations. Here, in the midst of alien grandeur and ancient prophecy, that adaptability would be his greatest strength. He focused on the vibrations of the platform, the patterns of energy, and the subtle cues from Lysera. As the trial began, Ethan noticed that the court watched not only his movements, but his intentions. Every gesture, every glance, every decision carried weight. He adjusted his posture, aligned his breathing with the rhythms of the heart, and allowed his mind to remain calm and observant. Slowly, he felt the energy respond to him. It was subtle at first, a small shimmer in the lights, a ripple in the platform, but it was there. Lysera's gaze remained fixed on him, her expression unreadable. "You are learning quickly," she said softly. "Humans are unpredictable, yes, but there is value in that. Your mind, your heart, your choices, they bring balance to what is rigid. That is why you are here." The trial continued for hours, though time felt different in this chamber. Ethan moved with care, responding to challenges, observing subtle shifts in energy and making choices that demonstrated respect, intelligence, and empathy. The court watched silently, yet he could feel their judgment, their approval, and their astonishment. Each time he succeeded, the platform's energy pulsed brighter, and the floating lights seemed to respond to him, weaving patterns that had never been seen before. Finally, the elder stepped forward once more. "The guest from Earth has demonstrated understanding, courage, and alignment with our ways," he said. "He is recognized not only as a participant, but as one who may fulfill the role foretold in prophecy. The court shall witness this recognition." Ethan felt a wave of relief but also a deep sense of responsibility. He had not sought this role. He had not asked to be part of a prophecy older than memory. Yet here he was, recognized not for titles, wealth, or power, but for the simple qualities that humans often overlooked. Courage, empathy, intelligence, and adaptability. Lysera stepped closer, her glow softening. "You have done well," she said. "The court will speak of this day for generations. Your presence here has changed our understanding and perhaps the future of both our peoples." Ethan bowed deeply. "I am honored, Princess. I will do my best to live up to what is expected." She smiled faintly. "That is all anyone can ask. Courage, humility, and a willingness to learn. These are the qualities that define greatness human. Not birthright or wealth, but the strength of character and heart." As they left the chamber, Ethan realized that his journey on Virelia had taken a turn he could never have predicted. What began as a simple visit to witness a wedding had become an immersion into a civilization, a recognition by a princess, and a role in a prophecy that spanned generations. The path ahead was uncertain, challenging, and potentially dangerous. Yet for the first time, Ethan felt the full weight and the full thrill of being human in a universe that had long underestimated humanity's potential. He walked beside Lysera through the floating gardens once more, the lights of Lumivara reflecting in his eyes. The city below hummed with energy, and he felt a profound connection, not just to the Zillions, but to the idea that humans, with their courage, curiosity, and adaptability, could leave a mark on the galaxy. Ethan knew that what came next would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. But he also knew the